Hello everyone. In today's lesson, we'll be learning about fractions. So we'll begin with addition of fractions. In addition of fractions, we'll look at fractions with the same denominators as well as fractions with different denominators. And then we'll move on to multiplication of fractions and finally division of fractions. So let's begin. Before we begin with this topic, it is very important for us to know which one is called the numerator and which one is called the denominator. So if I have a number, let's say 1 over 2, right? So a number above this line, it's called the numerator. So this one is the numerator. And the number below this line, which is 2, it's called the denominator. So the number above the line is called the numerator and the number below the line is called the denominator. It's very important for you to know which one is called the numerator and denominator, because throughout the video I'll be using the words numerator and denominator. So let's begin with the addition of fractions with the same denominator. So what do I mean when I say fractions with same denominators? If you look at this example, we can see we've got 1 over 3 plus 7 over 3. Both the fractions have the same denominators, right? 3 and 3. So what do we do in this case? Fractions with same denominators is easy. You draw a line, right? And then you see both are the same. Put your fraction denominator as it is, 3. And then you simply add the numerators. So what is the numerator of fraction 1? It's 1. And then what is the sign? Plus. Correct. And then what is the numerator of the second fraction? 7. So now you simply add them. What is 1 plus 7? 8. So 8 over 3. Hence our answer for this is 8 over 3. Did you see what we did? First we looked at the fraction, right? We have seen both the denominators are the same. We simply put our denominator as 3. Then we go on to add 1 and 7. Why add? Because we can see it's a plus sign here. So we wrote the numerator of the first fraction plus the sign and the numerator of the second fraction. Then we simply add these two. What is 1 plus 7? That's 8. Therefore, our answer is 8 over 3. So let's look at into steps how we did this. So what did we do in step 1? So in step 1, first we seen that the numerator denominators are the same. So we simply put the denominator as it is. Correct? What was step 2? In step 2, we simply put the numerators as they are and we place the sign. And what was the last step? We performed the calculation depending on the sign. So these are the 3 important steps when you do addition of fractions using the same denominators. Let's revise again. What did we do? Step 1, put the denominator as it is. Since we have seen both the denominators are same, we have put the denominator as it is. What was step 2? Put the numerator as they are and put the sign. Then we went on to the numerators of the fraction. What is the numerator of first fraction? It's a 1, right? And then put the sign. Then what is the sign? It's plus. And what is the numerator of the second fraction? That's 7. So you put 7 as it is. And finally, step 3 is perform calculation depending on the sign. So we have seen it's addition, therefore we just add the numerator, which is 1 plus 7, which is 8. And then finally our answer is 8 over 3. Let's do a few examples so that you can understand how we do it. Make sure to know all the steps, note them down. Let's move on to example 2. Example 2 says 2 over 4 plus 7 over 4. So let's follow our steps and solve this. What was step 1? We put the denominator as it is. What is our denominator? 4. So we write 4. What is our step 2? Step 2 said put the numerator or as they are and put the sign. What is our numerator of the first fraction? 2. What is the sign? Plus. And what is the numerator of the second fraction? 7. Now the final step says that perform calculation depending on the sign. So now 2 plus 7. What is 2 plus 7? That is 9. So we got 9 over 4. Can you see how easy it is to perform calculation on addition of the same denominator? Right, now we'll be moving on how to do subtraction using the same denominator. So let's move on to that. Subtraction of fraction using the same denominators for the same step as the addition. The only difference now is the sign. In the addition we had plus, in subtraction we'll have minus. So let's see, what did our step say? It says put the denominator as it is. What is our denominator? 3. So we put 3 as it is. Now second step, put the numerator as they are and put the sign. What is the numerator of the first fraction? 7. And the sign is negative. And what is the numerator of the second fraction? 1. Now the last step, perform calculation depending on the sign. What is our sign? Minus. So what is 7 minus 1? It is 6. Therefore our answer is 6 over 3. Now example 2 says 8 over 4 minus 1 over 4. So let's follow the steps and see where we get. So the first step is put the denominator as it is. Our denominator is 4. The next step is to put the numerator and the sign. So numerator of the first function is 8 and the sign is minus, and the numerator of the second function is 1. So we got 8 minus 1 over 4. The last step says perform the calculation depending on the sign. So what is 8 minus 1? 8 minus 1 is 7. So we got 7 over 4. So can you see how easy addition and subtraction of the same fraction is? Now we'll be moving on to minusing the fraction that can lead to the negative numbers. So with this example is no any difference. We still follow the same rule. It's just that we'll be asking our friend for help. Let's do it. So first step, put the denominator as it is. Our denominator is 4. Now we put the numerator and the sign as they are. What is the numerator of the first number? 1. What is the sign? Minus. What is the numerator of the second fraction? That is 8. So we got 1 minus 8. So now let's ask our friend the number line for help. So let's draw a number line. And now on the number line, where are we currently on? We are on 1, and we need to move 8 units to the left because of the negative sign. So we put a 1 here, positive 1, and we're moving 8 units to the left. So let's move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So what are the numbers to the left of positive 1? They are all decreasing. So we got 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, and finally negative 7. So if we say 1 minus 8, our answer is negative 7. So you come and write negative 7 all over the denominator, which is the 4. So that is your answer, negative 7 over 4. As I have been always telling you, whenever you are doing negative numbers, try to use your number lines so that your answer can be accurate. So now let's move on to addition and subtraction of fractions using different denominators. So now in this example, we can see both the fractions have different denominators. What is the denominator of first fraction? 2. What is the fraction of second denominator? 4, right? So they are both different. So now what do we do in this case? In this case, we need to find a common denominator, or what we call a lowest common denominator. Means you find the lowest number that can be divisible by both of this number. So how do we find it? So the first step you need to find is, first you take the denominator of the first fraction. Then you ask yourself, can 2 go into 2 or itself without a remainder? Indeed it can, right? 1 times without a remainder. Now we ask, can 4 go into 2? No, 4 cannot go into 2 without a remainder. So it means 2 cannot be our denominator. We move on to the second number, which is 4. So now you ask yourself, can 4 go into itself? Yes, it can. 1 times, that too without a remainder. Now we ask, can this 2 go into 4 without a remainder? Yes. How many times? 2 times. So you can see 4 can go into 4 once without a remainder, and 2 can go into 4 twice without a remainder. So we know our common denominator in this example is 4. So you come and write a 4 here. Right? Now you ask yourself, how many times can this 2 go into 4? We said 2 times, right? Open a bracket, write a 2 times the numerator of the first fraction, which is 1. You close the bracket. What is the sign? Plus. So you write plus. Now you ask yourself, how many times can the denominator of the second fraction go into 4? 1 time, right? Open a bracket, write a 1 times the numerator of the second fraction, which is 3. Now you simply perform the calculation. So what is 2 times 1? So you write over 4. What is 2 times 1? 2. Plus, what is 1 times 3? 3. So we know we got 2 plus 3 over 4. Now simply add the fraction. So add the numerators. So we got 2 plus 3 is 5. So the answer is 5 over 4. So did you see what we did in this example? Let's go through it again and see if you understand. So we got fractions with different denominators. The denominator of the first fraction is 2 and the denominator of the second fraction is 4. So what do we do? Now we need to find a common denominator, or what we call in maths is lowest common denominator. Means a lowest number that is common between these two numbers, 2 and 4, and that both can be divisible by without a remainder. So what do? We start by asking ourselves, we go to the first fraction and take the denominator of the first fraction, and we ask, can 2 go into itself? Yes, it can. How many times? 1 time, and that too without a remainder. No problem. But now we ask, can the second denominator of the second fraction go into 2? Can 4 go into 2 without any remainder? No, it cannot. So therefore 2 cannot be our common denominator. Now we move on to the second fraction and we take its denominator, and then we ask, can 4 go into itself? Yes, it can. How many times? 1 time without a remainder. Perfect. So now we go on to the first fraction and ask, can the denominator of the first fraction, which is 2, go into 4 without any remainder? Yes, 2 can go into 4. How many times? 2 times, that too without a remainder. Therefore we decided that our common denominator, or the lowest common denominator, is 4 in this case. Then what did we do next? Next we went on to the first fraction, and then we say, how many times can the denominator of the first fraction go into 4? 2 times. So we write a 2 times, what is the numerator of the first fraction? 1. And then we enclose it in a bracket. So 2 times 1 plus whatever is the sign between the two fractions. Then we move on to the second fraction. We ask ourselves, how many times can the denominator of the second fraction go into this 4? So we know it can go only once, because 4 times 1 is 4. So as it can go 1, we write a 1 here, and then we look at the numerator. What is the numerator of the second fraction? 3. Then we say times 3. So that is this step. Now what do? We perform calculation on the numerator. So we multiply in the bracket. So what is 2 times 1? 2 plus what is 1 times 3? 3. Then here we got the normal fraction, right? As we did in the previous ones also. So we have 2 plus 3 as the numerator over 4 as the denominator. Now we simply add 2 plus 3 is 5 over 4. That is our answer. Now let's look at this in steps and see what steps we need to perform in order to get this answer. So now let's look at step-by-step understanding of this. Okay? So what did step 1 say? Find the common denominator or the lowest common denominator. So we found that our common denominator or the lowest common denominator is 4. How did we found that? We went on to the first fraction and we asked ourselves, can 2 go into itself without a remainder? Yes, 1 time. Now can the denominator of the second fraction, which is 4, go into 2 without a remainder? Answer is no. So it means 2 is not the common denominator. Now we move on to the second fraction and we take its denominator, which is 4. Now we ask ourselves, can 4 go into itself without a remainder? And the answer is yes. 4 can go into itself once without a remainder. Now we ask, can 2 go into 4 without a remainder? The answer is yes, 2 times. Therefore we decided that 4 is our common denominator or the lowest common denominator. What is step 2? Now you see, how many times can the denominator of each fraction go into the common denominator? So we see how many times can the denominator of this fraction go into 4. How many times can the denominator of this fraction go into 4? Right? So we say 2 can go into 4 2 times. Right? And 4 can go into 4 1 times. And then multiply that with the numerator of each fraction. So we say 2 can go into 4 2 times and multiply that with the numerator of each fraction times. What is the numerator of that fraction? 1 plus. How many times can 4 go into 4? 1 times 3. So that's what step 2 says. Now step 3 says multiply the numerators. So now we need to open these brackets by multiplying. What is 2 times 1? 2 plus what is 1 times 3? 3. And the final step, depending on the sign, add or subtract the numerator. So the numerator sign was plus, so we're going to add 2 plus 3, which is 5. And the new denominator was 4. Therefore our answer is 5 over 4. This must be feeling overwhelming to you right now, but it will get easier as we work more and more examples. Make sure to take these notes down and write them on a paper so you can refer back when you do your examples. So let's go and do more examples and see how this is done. Now the example 2 says 8 over 10 minus 1 over 5. We can see our denominators are different and now we are dealing with subtraction. So first, what did our step 1 say? Find the common denominator or the lowest common denominator. So let's find it. We take our first denominator of the first fraction, which is 10, right? We ask ourselves, can 10 go into itself without a remainder? Yes, it can, once, right? Now we ask, can the denominator of the second fraction go into 10 without a remainder? Yes, 5 can go into 10 twice, that too without a remainder, because 5 times 2 is 10. So hence we found our common denominator, or the lowest common denominator, which is 10. Right. What is second step? How many times can the denominator of each fraction go into the common denominator? Then multiply that with the numerator of each fraction. So now we ask, how many times can 10 go into 10? We know it can go 1 times, right? you multiply that by the numerator of this fraction. What is the numerator of the first fraction? 8. So it's 1 times 8. Then you put the sign, which is negative. Now you repeat the same process. How many times can 5 go into 10? 2 times. So you write 2 times, what is the numerator of the first fraction? Which is 1. So we know that it is 1 times 8 minus 2 times 1 all over 10. Now the next step is multiply the numerators. So what is 1 times 8? Answer is 8 minus what is 2 times 1? 2 all over 10. And now finally add or subtract the numerator. So in this case we are going to subtract. So what is 8 minus 2? Answer is 6 over 10. Right. But now you can see in this fraction the answer is 6 over 10. If you look at 6 and 10, they both can be divisible. You can even write it then in a simpler form. So how do you know a number can be written in a more simpler form? So by looking at 6 and 10, I know there exists one number that can divide both the 6 and the 10. Right? And that number is 2. If we say 6 divided by 2 and 10 divided by 2, what is 6 divided by 2? 3. And what is 10 divided by 2? 5. Hence our final answer is 3 over 5. Example 3 says 2 over 6 minus 1 over 5. What's our steps? Find the common denominator or the lowest common denominator. So we first ask ourselves, can 6 go into itself? Yes, it can. Once that without a remainder. Now can 5 go into 6 without a remainder? No. So it means 6 is not our common denominator. We move on to the denominator of the second fraction. We ask ourselves, can 5 go into 5 without a remainder? Yes, it can. How many times? 1 time. Now, can 6 go into 5 without a remainder? No, it cannot. So you see, we have a problem now. Both cannot go into each other without a remainder. In this case, what do? You simply come and multiply the denominators. That will be your common denominator. So you simply come and write 6 times 5. Right? What is 6 times 5? 30, right? Therefore, your common denominator here will be 30. Did you see? So we didn't have any common denominator. 6 cannot go into 5 and 5 cannot go into 6. So in this case, you simply multiply the denominators, which is 6 times 5. Therefore, your denominator will be 30. Now everything else remains the same. Now you ask yourself, how many times can 6 go into 30? 5 times, right? So we got 5 times, what is the numerator of the first fraction? 2. The sign is minus. Now you ask yourself, how many times can the denominator of the second fraction go into 30? The answer is 6 times the numerator of the second fraction. Now again we do the same process. We multiply the numerators. What is 5 times 2? That is 10 minus what is 6 times 1? 6 all over simply 30. Alright? Now what is 10 minus 6? The answer is 4. 4 over 30. Again we can simplify this further. So what is that one number that can go into both 4 and 30? 2, right? Correct. So we know we can divide this by 2 and we can divide this by 2. So therefore our answer will be 2 over 15, because 2 times 2, 4, and 15 times 2 is 30. Therefore our answer is 2 over 15. Can you see the little twist in this function? In this example, we seen that 6 can go into itself, but 5 cannot go into 6. 5 can go into itself, but 6 cannot go into 5. So these two numbers cannot go into each other. So how do we find our denominator? You simply multiply these two denominator and you get your denominator. Then you follow the old rule, right? You look how many times can 6 go into 30, then you times that by the numerator. How many times can this 5 go into 30? Times that by 1. And then do the multiplication on top and then do the normal process. Then we see you can simplify it further. A common number between the two is 2, right? Therefore it is 2 over 15. So everyone, this is your homework for the addition and subtraction of fractions. This homework consists of addition and subtraction of fractions using the same denominators as well as using the different denominators. And in the different denominators, there are two categories if you remember, where we had the fractions common denominator, looking at the common denominator of the two fractions, and the one where we had to multiply the two common denominators of the fractions. So please, when you do this, refer back to your notes and then do your homework. I can't emphasize more. The more you practice, the better your maths becomes. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I've decided to separate this lesson into two parts. The part 1 will consist of addition and subtraction of fractions. It's because the first part was getting much bigger. And part 2 will be consisting of division and multiplication of fractions. If you enjoy my video, please comment down in the comment box below. Please subscribe to my channel, like and share with your friends. Until then, stay safe and study.